In this video, I want to talk about angle measure. I want to actually define what an angle measure in both degrees and radians actually means, as well as how to convert between the two. Here, I'm denoting an angle that I'm calling theta. The idea of an angle is we are looking at two rays that intersect at their starting points. So we have this vertex, this starting point for the rays, and then we have two rays going off. And then this between them is known as the angle between these two rays. So how do we actually measure this angle? Let's start by talking about measuring an angle in terms of degrees. Let's suppose I have a circle here, and this point here is my center. The idea of a degree is I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to break it up into 360 pieces. We're going to denote this piece as 0 degrees. This is half of the circle, so half of 360 would be 180 degrees. I've now broken it into fourths, so 90 and 270. And we can keep going. If I break it in half again, that would be 45 degrees, and we keep going. We break this up into 360 pieces. So if I want to talk about this angle here, well, then I look at how many pieces between my starting point to my ending point. And in this case, there are 45. If I want to look at this angle here that I'll call alpha, I need to know how many pieces are between these two ending points, between 180 and 270. In this case, 90. So this is the idea of degrees. I take a circle and I break it up into 360 pieces. And then I look at how many of those pieces make up my angle. Now let's look at measuring an angle in terms of radians. Once again, we let the positive x side be equal to 0, radians. And so the idea of a radian, so let's say that this particular circle, it has a radius of r. Then what I do is I start at the 0 and I go along the circle for about r, or for exactly r, a length of r along this circle. And then that point on the circle, that would give me 1 radian. So this is the idea of a radian, is if I have a radius of r, then I need an arc length of r to get a total of 1 radian. Since the circumference of a circle is given by 2 pi r, so this would have 1 r here, and we would get a total of 2 times pi r, so just a little over 6 radians for a circle. So an entire circle would have 2 pi radians. Since we would divide the entire circle into pieces of size r, there would be 2 pi of them. So this is the idea of radians. The radius is equal to the arc length, and that would give me 1 radian. So this tells me that we have 360 degrees in a circle. We have 2 pi radians in a circle, so 360 degrees must be equal to 2 pi. If I divide both sides by 2, I get that 180 degrees is equal to pi radians, and this is the form that we use the most often, my conversion factor. So to go from degrees to radians, I have a given value of degrees, and I'm going to multiply it by pi over 180. To go from radians to degrees, I have a given angle in terms of radians, and I'm going to multiply it by 180 over pi. So let's look at some examples of this. Let's convert 60 degrees to radians. So what we need to multiply by is we need to kind of think through our units. In order to cancel the units appropriately, I would need degrees on the bottom and radians on the top. 60 divided by 180 is 1/3. So this would be pi over 3 radians. So 60 degrees is pi over 3 radians. Next, let's look at 150 degrees. Once again, I want to cancel the degrees, so I'm going to put degrees on the bottom. And what I want, radians on the top. When I do this, 150 divided by 180 is 5 over 6. And then I still have a pi, so 5 pi over 6 radians. Next, let's suppose I have pi over 6 radians and I want to convert it to degrees. So I need to put my units that I want to cancel on the bottom and the units that I want on the top. So there are pi radians in 180 degrees. So this would be 180 pi over 6 pi if I multiply the top and multiply the bottom. 180 divided by 6 is 30, and my pi's cancel, so pi over 6 would be 30 degrees. Next, let's do 3 pi over 2 radians. So for this, I would once again need to multiply by 180 over pi. Multiplying the top, 3 times pi times 180 would be 540 pi. The bottom, 2 times pi is 2 pi. My pi's would cancel, and 540 divided by 2 is 270. So this would be 270 degrees.